Well, somebody asked me a while back that, Mithun, you're from Bangalore and does it rain all the time? I'm like, not all the time, but yes, it does rain most often. Then they asked me, why is it raining in Bangalore right now? Why is it raining in Chennai? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's the rain time, and that's exactly why it's raining in Chennai and in Bangalore. Then I happened to be in Goa a day back, and then it was raining in Goa too. And then today I'm in Bombay and I have the scope of rain here as well. So, what is really happening? I know we all love rain, but what is really happening? Well, I'll leave this thought back to you. I do not want to give more insight about it because you know the answer. What I am going to do is welcome you for what you're here right now with a thought. Welcome to the EYESG Leadership Dialogues second edition, and I'm very, very thrilled to be a part of this one because we have certain panelists and our moderator who have seen things, who have experienced it, and they're here with a bold message, thought, perception, such that you become a seeker and you learn much more. Hi, my name is Mithun Upadhyay. I'm going to be the host for the next 1 hour session, and hardly of me, mostly of them. So let's get started. What are we here for? Decarbonization, leading towards net zero. And this has been the perception, the forte, the thought, and the minds of billions of people across the world to go towards leading towards net zero. Well, decarbonization represents the next great transformation where the global energy landscape is seen changing more in the next 10 years. As the world's energy sector moves away from the fossil fuels towards the renewable energy sources, industrial companies are challenged with addressing this transition in transformative ways. Institutional and private investors are preferring assets with decarbonization strategies everywhere. As of December 2020, 127 countries across the world have either set net zero emission targets or declared intentions to do so, representing an effect that is around 60% of global emissions. And it's all coming together. Where do you stand? Where are you as an individual or as an organization? A big question, a big thought. What we are going to do now is get into what are we talking about? What are we going to discuss about? The key points of discussion today is going to be what technical developments are making decarbonization more feasible. Just not that. What are the current opportunities and risk for business? A big thought. What can companies do to decarbonize? Recommendations for companies to decarbonize, political drivers for decarbonization, latest IEA report findings, and we'll summarize it with the challenges along the journey to decarbonization. And I'm very happy that we have a set of panelists and moderator who are master when it comes to give you the thought. I'm very, very happy to welcome here our panelists. To start with, please welcome Santosh Chandra, who's joined in early in the morning from wherever he is, who's the CEO of Esser Oil and Gas. We welcome you here, sir. Along with him is going to be Mr. Amit Sharma, MD and CEO, Tata Consulting Engineers and Engineering Services. Joining the two gentlemen is going to be Ashish Bhandari, MD and CEO for Thermax. And of course, the three is joined by Madhav Singhania, Deputy MD and CEO for JK Cement. Now, the four panelists will have a moderator who has the key to bring in and bring out every aspect of what we are about to discuss today. Please welcome partner national leader, climate change and sustainability services, EY India, Mr. Chaitanya Kalia, our moderator for this amazing topic of the day, decarbonization leading towards net zero. Chaitanya, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mithun. Thank you for a great introduction. Thanks for putting those excellent words before. And I take this opportunity on behalf of EY to welcome all these distinguished panelists, leaders to this EY ESG Leadership Forum. As you told that this is the second version, we did that one about a month before. And we planned it much ahead in time, but today it become very, very relevant when we are talking about decarbonization. And just now we concluded COP26 and still trying to absorb what all has happened and how it is going to impact each one of our lives and our businesses. I could not imagine this being a very, very apt point of time that we are conducting these sessions. So once again, to all my fellow panelists, thank you very much for accepting the invitation and joining this, and really look forward to very enlightened and fruitful discussion. Looking forward to learn several things from you. So, if you are all okay, I'll go ahead with the panel discussion. And I'll start with, first with Santosh. We know we have troubled you a lot and, woke you up early in the morning, somewhere in US, Houston probably. So I'll start with you. Overall, what is your take in a sense then how you look at it in this decarbonization? Is it going to change drastically for the sector that you belong, which is, oil and gas, specifically gas? What is your view on that?
Good afternoon, everyone. So, as I think Chaitanya alluded, as well as the great introduction within gave, I'm joining from Houston. I've been actually on a trip here, and since I had said yes, I said okay. So it's 4 a.m. here almost. A very relevant, what I would say, topic on this roundtable. And the sector that I am in, I'll take the liberty to give a brief update and then get into some of those questions that everybody is, discussing as a hot topic, particularly in the energy sector. So I head the oil and gas business of SR Group in India, and our forte and our USP is unconventional gas resources. So our flagship project is in east of India, Raniganj, which is actually close to Durgapur, the steel city. And we won this block in the first bidding round, as the government of India gives out at various times, way back about 15-20 years. Did exploration, did a massive investment of almost 4,000 crores, and put in about 350 wells. This was the first block in the country to reach 1 million SCMD per day of gas. And most recently, we got connected to the national gas grid. So the Urja Ganga pipeline has come all the way to Durgapur now and was inaugurated about 8 months back. So basically, our molecule of gas can move from basically Durgapur, the project, to all the way to Hazira if needed be. But so we are pumping into the grid. There are a fertilizer plant that takes most of our gas, and a lot of local industries in various sectors. So for us, basically, the goal is currently clear that as once we connect to the grid, we have a huge resource-based potential for almost 15 TCF, which we are trying to develop, more development drilling as well as that. So obviously, the usual question, those who are not in the sector, is, oh, oil and gas is going to be passé, what are you guys trying to do? But pick up any report, any analysis, any research, and it will tell you, and I firmly believe that oil and gas, particularly gas, will remain in the energy mix for several decades to come, as the world weans away itself from what it called fossil fuel. The first, obviously, target for getting rid of is coal, and gas nicely fits in as a growth transition fuel as people move away from fossil fuels into renewables. As we all appreciate, as in the industry, a lot of it is economic driven, and as long as gases make sense and environmental friendly, people will use it. So our business is focused quite a lot in trying to get the gas production up, get a lot of industries in that region, East India. This is the first time gas grid has reached there to convert from coal into gas as a bridge fuel, as well as we have a start business, a section of CNG. I feel very proud that we are supplying the first CNG to the metropolitan city of Kolkata, where vehicles are being converted from petrol and diesel into compressed natural gas and started running there. That's been going on for the last 6-8 months. And slowly that city will. So we are the sole supplier there, and we continue to build that business. As SR, we are also looking at renewables, biofuels, as well as bio-CNG. We signed an MOU with the government about 5 months back on developing modular small scales, multiple location bio CNG as well. So that's where I'll stop, I think, initially, and Chaitanya, we can go into the more details.
Yeah, thank you very much, Santosh. I think I completely relate that the gas in India as well as world over is looked at kind of a transition fuel when we are looking at a decarbonization. So absolutely agree. Let me, now get to Ashish. From Thermax, we know the organization has been very much forefront into the industrial energy supply, energy service kind of an organization. And now we are talking about, the clean coal and the coal being, in the COP was very important element that no more coal, but ultimately everyone, the leaders of the world, they realize that it is not so easy to move away from coal, and it's going to be there. And in India also, we have a lot of dependency on this specific area. What is your view? How do you think Thermax is positioned around this aspect?
Thank you, Chaitanya. And if I may, I'll expand the definition to slightly beyond coal. I think currently maybe less than 10% of Thermax is dependent on coal. I'll say for India, I think like everyone else has said, the question around how do you manage energy sustainability along with energy availability. I think you have to be able to balance both of those. In light of that, I think the commitments that India has made as part of COP26, the highlights that we all remember are the 2070 net zero and the fact that we managed to introduce a phase down of coal and not a phase out. Beyond that, though, India made a couple of very big statements out there. First, that we would cut down improve our renewables as part of the overall energy mix to nearly 50% by 2030. So that was a very bold statement. How that comes into the economy, that's a big, big, big question. The second was the carbon intensity reduction and the removal of 1 gigatons of CO2 from a carbon intensity perspective between now and 2030. So I think the 2030 goals are very relevant, not just for India, for all companies. And for Thermax, we take this to heart in every which way. So the few things that we are working on that we are quite excited about is of our existing portfolio, a big move towards waste heat, process heat, waste to energy of all different kinds. And even now, that's a big part of our business, looking to make it even more so. Yeah, every kind of waste that is possible, how do you bring it back? And technologies around it, that's what we are working on. Biomass, biofuels, big, big, big part of it. After that now, the scope in entering newer spaces. Yeah, so we are going to partner with companies on energy transition, put our own money to work. We will take equity in projects. We are today running about 30 plants on a build, own, operate basis across India, completely run on biofuels, where we provide clean energy to the customer, power, steam, whatever, and we manage everything else. Increasingly, this model is expanding where we are willing to come in with OpEx solar, variety of different storage solutions, everything that a customer may need, round the clock power, energy management, bringing digital into the mix. And then finally, being very open to entering newer areas as they become available. Electrolyzers, fuel cells, doing our own R&D, bringing new money into play, whatever is needed for the new world to come together as well. So very excited about the journey. I think we're just barely taking the first step over what will be a decades-long fight to take India to a new energy world, and looking forward to working that. Thanks.
Very well, Ashish. I think very well poised and thought through how Thermax probably is looking at next 10 years, specifically some of the area related to energy, alternate energy, digital. I'll have a few more questions around that, but let me first get back to Madhav. Madhav, representing cement industry, you have a unique situation because of the process emissions that as an industry you bring in. At the same time, I know that as a sector, a lot of activities you guys are doing, and GCCA or otherwise, several things are happening and very aggressively addressing this decarbonization issue. Would you like to throw some highlights about how it is happening? What are the challenges you are facing and the actions that you are taking?
Absolutely. So, firstly, thank you so much, Chaitanya, EY, and Times for having me here today. In fact, it was a pleasure to hear both Santosh and Ashish give their views before me. I'd just like to start firstly by talking a little about concrete, because it's one of the basic building blocks of the world today. And even if, as we speak, there are still a majority of the countries which don't have their infrastructure fully built as on date. In fact, even India has recently announced its massive infrastructure pipeline. So concrete will continue to remain the basic building block as we go along. Having said that, concrete is also one of the most sustainable building materials which exist today when we compare it to any of the others, like steel, aluminium, and even bricks in some cases. So, when we look at concrete, it is the most consumed material on a per capita basis globally after water. So that is the reason why when we look at the massive consumption, it is responsible for 6 to 7% of the global emissions. So what are we doing as an industry? So cement is obviously the biggest contributor there. And when we look at the cement industry in general, the Indian cement industry is one of the most efficient ones globally, wherein we have the lowest carbon and fuel footprint. Also, we have reduced our emissions by 30% from 1990 to 2020. And everyone has taken commitments to reduce it by another 20%. So from 600 kgs per ton of cement to about 480. So that will again reduce another 20%. And the way we are doing this is, in fact, Ashish touched on it. We are using waste to energy. So a lot of the waste heat is being converted into power. The second thing is we are using alternate fuel. So we are using municipal solid waste, which has a certain fraction which is called refuse derived fuel. And a lot of people are looking to replace coal with alternate fuels. So as on date in India, the thermal substitution rate is pretty low globally. It's only at a 4 or 5%, wherein at JK Cement, we've reached about 9%. And we have a target to reach 35% by 2030. And hopefully, increase this to a much larger number in the coming years. The last point, Chaitanya, you mentioned was the process related emissions. So, while a lot of the abatement we can continue to do through alternate fuels, through alternate or renewable energy. In fact, even in mining, we are experimenting with CNG or LNG based mining equipment. In transportation, we are looking at, it could be CNG as a fuel or maybe even electric vehicles. So that transition is happening. But the process related emissions, we will have to maybe, look at carbon capture and storage as the final solution, in terms of what to do with the CO2 which comes out of calcining CaCO3 and producing CO2 in lime. So that is something which would be the last step, which would probably transpire post 2030-35. And by then, hopefully, there'll be many more solutions as to what can be done with it.
Right. I could not agree with you more, and several of these are yet emerging. So, Madha, I'll get back to you on some of these. Let me reach out to Amit. And Amit, you are very uniquely positioned. Probably all these fellow panelists discussed. You are going to design it and make it happen. So, how do you think, as a business in TCE, things are moving, aligning with decarbonization? Do you think a remarkable shift happening here? And what are your thoughts around this?
Hi, Chaitanya. Thanks a lot. Yeah, it was nice to hear views from Santosha, Ashish, and Madhav, and Chaitanya. Thanks for giving the context. So, about 6 years back, we saw a transition almost happening as various, value chain players were relooking at their strategies. The first thing we saw from the outside in was large capex was being turned into mini capex or opex, right? So there were more investments coming, which were opex based, extending the plant sustenance, and lesser of large capex. And that was both financial as well as the outlook in terms of how the situation was evolving in terms of commitment to decarbonization. And I guess the pandemic just accelerated the whole thing. As a responsible citizens and firms world over, ESG became center stage at the board level, right? So obviously the next thing we saw outside in the market as the mega projects gave way to mini OPEX or mini CAPEX and OPEX was how do you connect the old assets with the new assets? And that's where digital comes in, right? Because you're rewiring your company, you're trying to extend it and trying to digitalize the old assets with the new assets you're taking in your landscape. The third, cycles, macro at micro and micro level, the cycles are very smaller and shorter. So the ROI expectation is much earlier, which means we are looking at more modular, repeatable projects rather than greenfield and customized projects. So a lot of focus on precast, prefab, modular approach, whether you are in infrastructure, whether you're in resources, whether you're in building sector, it's all about Lego block approaches. And that means the clients want outcomes, project outcomes earlier. So these are outside in. How do we respond to that? Obviously, a big part of this is technology driven. So digital, of course, in terms of solutions that we give to our clients. Number two, with modular, a lot of Lego block approach, which is use of 3D, 4D, 5D solutions for our clients, for simulating them, for coming out with better ROIs. And last but not the least, of course, on the project management, a very tight focus on the timelines because of the ROI expectations. And as we, transformed our business to be a remote business with most of the projects being global in nature, funding coming from one area, projects happening in the other areas of the world, these things helped us to face COVID. And we didn't have even a single day of downtime in the last 2 years because our operations were fully digital on using CAD solutions, and remote working was but obvious the approach to do global engineering work. So I think it's very exciting times, not only to rewire the business if you come from the customer side, but to find very exciting solutions if you come from the consultant side. And towards the end, I'll just say, it's evident. I mean, we did almost 50% of the power plants in India, including nuclear. That's probably 150 gigawatts. And in the last 10 years, it's a big shift to renewable with solar. We've done less than 4 years, about 18 gigs of solar. The next big thing is energy storage. And discussion on energy storage from a traditional pump water to battery banks to now hydrogen as a reservoir of energy, and the whole story on hydrogen as the eventual fuel, whether it's ammonia, hydrogen, or of course lithium, time will tell. But these are strategies that we are seeing in almost all our customers in the infrastructure, process, resources, and the plant engineering space. And we're very excited to work in those initial roadmaps, evaluate early on technologies at TRL level 2, 3, and 4, so that by the time the energy landscape and roadmap pretty much is adopted by various industry players, the TRLs of these startups and breakthrough technologies catch up with the eventual goals aligned to COP26. So I would summarize exciting times. I think engineers have had a lot of standard stuff for 100 years. And with the industry 4.0, as we say 5.0 now, it's engineering play field with a lot of possibilities to look at circularity, sustainability, green, and the whole concept of digitalization for the captive audience in the plant. Chaitanya, back to you.
Thank you so much. I mean, it was such a positive way of putting it. I really enjoyed listening to you, and give me a lot of confidence that, at one way everyone is worried about how we are going to meet this target, etc. There is so much of happening at the back end, and engineers are doing, your organization is doing. I think we are in the right spot and definitely going to make it happen to achieve those targets. Really, and let me come back to Santosh. Knowing a little bit about CBM, I mean, methane, if not captured, then it's one of the greenhouse gases, goes to the atmosphere. In your view, are we doing enough? Are you extracting enough? Could there be something which can be done more? It's in a double-edged sword, in the sense that if you're not capturing, it is getting emitted from gassy mines, etc. What can we do more about it? Can you throw some light for me and for the audience?
Yeah, Chaitanya, I think you touched a very key point on, when we talk about decarbonization, it covers the entire, the big focus seems to be on CO2, but,
Right.
methane emissions that go from various sources, including, biogestation and all that. A large part of it is actually from mining activities. And the coal beds or the coal seams that we are mining actually, or Coal India Limited, the big brother actually of India, mining public sector, when it mines, actually it releases a lot of methane, which is trapped on it. The good thing or the silver lining is not all coal has methane. So it's not the case that every bit of coal that is being mined is releasing a lot of methane. So just like conventional oil and gas, we have an exploration process. You end up drilling a lot of core holes, collect core samples and see if there is a gas content. And if there is a gas content, then only you can do a what you call CBM extraction by a conventional drilling. So you asked a specific question, is India done enough? I think not, because typically, if you remember how as the energy demand went up, a lot of policy thrust and opening up started happening, and oil and gas is a very regulated sector, unlike probably others. I must say, in 2021, it's much less regulated, but still, nevertheless, it's regulated. So, what the government has done, realized that actually we are not actually tapping into an unconventional gas resource. So, right at the PM level, first of all, he gave a vision of increasing the gas in the energy mix of India from the current consumption of about 6% to 15% within a decade. That's a very ambitious target, and that has spurred what I would call every source of gas that can be, sourced, whether indigenous or even if you import LNG and all that. So in the CBM extraction business, government has just come out with a new bidding round with a very, very liberal terms and all that you don't have to pay anything other than just royalty and basically go for it, make investment. So it's a capex intensive business, but those blocks are out there, and a lot more can be done, because the CBM potential of India is about 90 TCF. These are big numbers. These are resources, but they need to be converted into reserve.
Right.
What is also happening is, as you see, this energy mix, talking 15% in the energy mixing by 2030, is also driven by a massive infrastructure build that is happening, particularly from city gas distribution, piped gas connections that's going on, as well as trying to convert a lot of vehicles into the CNG, which is much cheaper as well as much less polluting and all that. I think this coming decade you will see some activity, but I'm not sure whether big capex will come into it. Primarily, as Amit mentioned and Madhav also was saying about, what is happening is this ESG driven climate activism, if I'll say, which is, the need is actually keeping a lot of fund flows or investments away from what you will call them conventional or unconventional oil and gas. Yeah. So I suspect that there would be a challenge in that. My own thinking is that, yes, in a decade we'll increase the energy mix, the gas in the energy mix. A lot of it will be fed through imported actually LNG and all that. But then we will probably leapfrog into hydrogen, which was already mentioned. And I think we as India are, given the innovation explosion that is happening in the whole startup world and all that, I personally strongly believe, maybe I dream, but that come 2030 is, India will surprise the world in hydrogen production, and particularly green hydrogen. And I'll come to that later. So I think I'll stop there. There's a lot of thoughts and I can share with you, but one of the things that will trigger this energy move will be obviously clearly economic and technology, but seeds have been sowed for breakthrough technologies, particularly in electrolyzers and things like that. That will be the forte for what I'm talking about, that we might leapfrog straight from where we are now and into hydrogen, basically, because without that, massive changes in the industrial scale that we are looking for will not be possible. These renewable things and solar, wind is okay for something, but remember, there's no wind 24 hours a day, and there's no sun for 12 hours a day. And recently we saw the energy crisis where because of lack of wind in China and lack of wind in Europe and lack of enough solar thing in China and other shortages, energy prices went through the roof in Europe. Gas was selling at $35, things like that. So I think the answer to India's energy needs is hydrogen, and we'll come to that later. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Santosh. I think, please hold for that thought. Probably hydrogen is very, very important component. So I'll get back to you. I want to check with, Ashish, you talked about, partnership and doing several things. How about how easy it is, how difficult it is to look at the right kind of partnership? When we look at certain technology, is it easier to have right kind of partner? Are companies with right kind of technology favoring India? What is the thought process here?
First, I think, Chaitanya, the importance of partnerships is very much there for two reasons. First, many of these are ecosystem plays. They are not, for example, if you have a unique technology or you would like to enter the market for fuel cells. Yeah, one of the biggest areas for fuel cells is long distance mobility. So you cannot be a fuel cell manufacturing player without understanding who will be the mobility partner, where will the hydrogen come from, and then kind of questions around manufacturing the fuel cell. And the fuel cell itself has got a lot of subcomponents. Which ones are you partnering for? Which ones are you making yourself? With them, is there some sort of a reformer needed, not needed? So first is the question on of the entire ecosystem, finding it. Next is the question around the technology itself. Yeah, because all of these, as we're talked about, in any given point within storage, within solar, within even electrolyzer, PEM, alkaline, there are a host of technologies, host of startups. So to make the right call invariably means that you can't do everything yourself. You have to rely on partnerships and you have to look at the market itself. The third element of the partnership is the government itself. Yeah, the way the government deploys and drives the hydrogen economy forward, the PLI schemes that come up, the role of coal, the role of coal tax, all of these. So these are all partnerships in one form or another. The first thing a company can do is be very open to the idea that you can't do everything yourself. Second is you're constantly in a discussion mode. You're constantly talking to people, understanding. And when you see the dots align, you have to move very, very fast. And the third is if the company is clear on what strategic path they are on, then you actively go out and seek partners. You don't wait for serendipity to happen. You actually go with options, knowing that not every option will come through. But the fact that these are all partnership plays is a given. Absolutely. Thanks.
Right. I know. I mean, in India, I was looking at some data on this startup ecosystem. In last 3 years, probably the amount of funding which these startups working in this energy space, decarbonization, hydrogen, I think that has increased manyfold. I mean, thousands of fold times. So I completely agree that there is a lot more happening already. And, as Amit also said, that that is one ecosystem probably we all will see, jump is likely to happen, including on the, digital part. Thank you
Chaitanya,
so
I would
much.
just
Yeah.
say that
Yeah.
partnerships are Indian startups. On the digital side, there are quite a few. There are many other
Right.
places where they are, but in true energy technology startups, unfortunately, there are not too many good ones. Yeah, because
Okay.
just the amount of investment that is needed in some of these, whether it's battery technology, true kind of solar, perovskites, tandem technologies, grid storage, electrolyzers, there we see fewer companies. Yeah, they're not as many as there are in other parts of the world.
Right. Now, that's
Yeah, you're
what
right,
the
Ashish.
point, and any of the panelists can also jump in. So if that be the case, how easier or how difficult it could be to get those technologies for us? So anyone can jump in to answer this question, because that is something probably likely to be very, very important. Santosh, Madhav, otherwise I have a different question for you as well.
I'll just do briefly and then let the others speak. I think one thing I think we all know very clearly, I mean, the West, who's, India's position is very justified, that you've polluted all these years, decades and all that. And now when the time comes, you want to sell us stuff. So they're not going to easily give the technology. But I think the government's approach that has been there, where encouraging domestic innovation and the support system, despite the challenges, and it's not easy, there are things being done. And my belief is that there'll be a mix of things that we have to an extent come of age where we would be able to break through and create some things here, of course, with the help of the West and all that. I mean, the case in point is data is still the cheapest in the world, the way we have penetrated data everywhere, and the ecosystem that we have created on the banking, the Aadhaar, and the mobile kind of thing, which is actually supporting all this, digital thing. There's something similar would happen in the energy space, and I'll stop there. Thanks. That's a bit speculation, but I think we are getting it there. Not enough being done on the energy space, but there are people already biting in there.
So, just to add a few points, Chaitanya, I think the energy security is one very important aspect of how we will evolve towards our pledge on the ESG side, decarbonization on the industrial scale, but also in terms of the national energy security. And I think that's what will fundamentally change the perspective on investments at the startups on certain strategic areas, like hydrogen, case in point, with electrolyzers, storage solutions, and the whole chemistry around PEM and other areas. Or it could be the approach like we took on, our own national interest around pharma, bulk drugs, etc., with the changing geopolitical situation and the whole supply chain realignment. So I think there are early startups, which we've been tracking and working closely with. And I do agree, while the initial Industry 4.0 IIoT startup network with sensorization and stuff, there was a legit Indian story out there. When it comes to pure energy, chemicals, and the whole chemistry around innovation and stuff, there are early startups there working both at academia level as well as the ecosystem across few parts of India, which we are finding very encouraging results on. And I think coupling this with the national security objectives, we'll see the Atal Innovation Mission, national skill development focus areas, the DRDOs and CSIR labs working together, which we had privilege of connecting in some shape or form. So I'm hopeful that there would be acceleration in these innovation hubs when it comes to more pure chemistry and a long-term roadmap towards both national security, energy security, as well as the decarbonization efforts to which India has signed the pledge for. And last, I would say partnerships become pretty much obvious because you're not reinventing the wheel, because the cycles are so short that if you were to reinvent yourself, you would lose out the race. So partnerships, strategic, tactical, or opportunistic, whatever you call it, have to be there, and it has to be Lego plug and play solutions. So you pick up the best partner, do a Lego block, plug and play, ride the wave, wait for the next technology evolution, and keep on evolving like that. And that's why core competencies you'll have to define very clearly, that this is what is must for my organization. Everything else I'm going to partner. And with that core competency approach, deep technology and knowledge by keeping yourself upgraded will only come through partners who invested in depth on that area. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much.
Chaitanya, I just want to add one quick point.
Yeah.
I feel funding is now more readily available. At least that's what we are seeing. You also mentioned last 3 years, a lot more startups are getting funded big time. So if they work on the correct value chain partnerships, in terms that, let's say maybe a person inventing or working on a fuel cell, he has to find the right customer or the right technology partner to partner with. I'm sure there's a lot of funding available, and it's bound to happen. It's only probably a matter of a few years, but the startup ecosystem will definitely play a major role here as well.
Right. Although you also said that you're looking for, you jump in your TSR 9% to, 35% by 2030. So are these elements playing in back of your mind that how it will happen? It's not an easy task. I'm sure there has been some thought process while looking at some of these kind of commitments. And
No, absolutely.
Any role startup is playing there, technology is playing there.
No, so Chaitanya, see what has happened is we have heard, from even this COP meeting, we have heard a lot of announcements.
Right.
And it's been big announcements. Somewhere it's been like, who can announce something better than the other? So, you've heard some amazing announcements coming out of there. And the only part is the duration is pretty long. Now, when we look at it, the cement industry says by 2050, we will be net zero. But there is still a fair amount of time for that. So when we look at 2030 and the announcements we've made, we've thought of how we are going to achieve it. And you mentioned TSR from 9% to 35%. So, what we see in all our cities is waste is a big issue. You have all these piles of dump lying across most major cities. And now, in fact, the municipal corporations and the government has been working firstly for waste segregation at source, and also for clearing out some of these old dumps which have been lying. So when we look at this, about 70% of this is actually waste which can just be composted into manure, and about 30% is waste which has calorific value and can be burnt. And now, since this aspect is getting organized, there is a source of alternate fuel which comes, or which has started coming from this industry, which is getting organized as well as growing. So that is one area which is helping us in a big way. The second thing is there is a lot of industrial waste, as well as the entire waste management rules 2016 which have come up. So whether it be hospital waste, it be industrial waste, everything has to be properly managed. And given that aspect, a lot of the urban local bodies, in fact, even the plastic waste rules which have come, wherein every company now has to consume or collect back the plastic which they are putting into the environment. So all this makes it available for us. It gives us enough sources of fuel. The second thing we are working on is we've tied up with a company called Prespel. So it's a company which collects biomass. So we are seeing crop burning being a big issue. It's discussed in a big way even today. So there are these 2 seasons wherein a lot of biomass gets produced. And there is still, as per estimates, about 950 million tons of biomass gets produced every year. But the uses of this are still very limited. And there's a huge opportunity in terms of creating products from this. We've even, someone's working on biofuels, someone's working on building materials, someone's working on. So if what certain companies are doing is they're creating an ecosystem to store it and facilitate consistent supply, which is helping us again, maybe helping us from a 5-10% from this source. So there are various sources which are helping us reach this, which will help us reach this 35%. The other aspect which we are working on is today renewable energy as a percentage mix of our energy mix is only 25%. So we've taken a commitment that this should be 75%. Now about 25% of this will come from waste heat. So earlier there was a huge viability issue that, setting up waste heat power plants is not viable because the per megawatt cost of setting it up is maybe 10 crores a megawatt versus a captive power plant, which was only 4 crores a megawatt. But now, given the entire sustainability journey, the pricing of fuel, every cement plant being set up today is being set up with waste heat. And this will play a major role in adding about 25%, and then another from, solar, wind, but then all that depends on, the state's policies as well, in terms of banking and storage. So that will play a major role in terms of how industries could maybe move to 100% renewable energy mix in their portfolio. So I hope that answers the question, Chaitanya.
Yeah, of course, it's a long journey, and I look at it, but that reminds me to a question, and let me frame this question, the same question for everyone. I hear you, Madhav, saying that starting from huge focus on renewable, waste which is available converted to waste as a fuel, waste heat recovery. We also listen to Santosh saying that gas coming up as a transition fuel. Amit has talked about the plug and play model, Lego model, looking industry 4.0 and 5.0, and then Ashish gave us very clear perspective in terms of there are various possibilities that is happening together as a partnership, as his own organization, looking energy as a service sector, and several things are happening. So I have one question now, saying that what as an industry your suggestion would be they should be looking at, where do they prioritize for next 3 to 5 years? That's really coming down to, because one side we are talking about net zero 2070, really long term, but then several things are happening as of now, and I'm sure our audience and listener would like to look at what do I do, what is the value for my time, for resources, for money. I really my apologies, we did not discuss this question before or anything, but I think very, very pertinent question coming to my mind. So would you like to just take a shot? There is nothing right or wrong here. What would be your suggestion, Madhav? You would like to go?
So see, Chaitanya, the first step, which now every company has started doing, is the ESG framework has come in place, and it's come in place in a big way, wherein, as even Amit mentioned, it's at the forefront of even boardroom discussions. As to every capex decision, what is the impact it will have on my sustainability goals as well as on my ESG footprint. So that's the first step. And also, every company is now starting to measure, or is already measuring, their carbon footprint and seeing what are the the low-hanging fruits in terms of what can be executed first, for which technologies are available, and for which the cost, maybe to some extent you have to put a cost for carbon, and you have to see how I can how much do I need to spend to bring this down, and then start making those investments in that journey. Similarly, if you're setting up, let's say, a new plant, then you set it up keeping in mind the framework which you've set for yourself for 2030. Don't continue to invest in the manner you have in the past. So these are just, a few starting points which I feel are extremely important, at least for the next 3 to 5 years. And in the interim period, I am sure there will be multiple technologies which you could work with someone in the form of a value chain partnership to see how it can evolve. Like we are doing one in the biomass space. We are doing another in the circular economy, waste management space. So we see how these gradually evolve and how they help us fulfill our goal.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Madhav. Yeah, maybe I can, move on to Santosh, your views.
So there are many things. I'll just specific to my sector. I'll talk. what for the participants. One of the things that is happening, as I said, on the energy mix is obviously you're weaning off transport from petrol and diesel. One, it's a double whammy for India because you've imported most of it, as well as it's much more carbon intensive and all that. So while the technology breakthroughs happen, particularly on hydrogen, which is where I think they'll shift is, there is a big move and the government policy thrust on using LNG for transport. I mean, a little known data that China operates is 25-30% of its truck fleets on LNG. So with the LNG as a fuel, trucks can go like almost 1,200-1,500 kilometers, one tank full, and they can go from Mumbai to probably Delhi or wherever it is, and that's happening. There's already a planned blueprint in the next 2 years to have almost 1,000 stations, and SR is big time in it. The other aspect that I think in the next 3 to 5 year windows we are doing is, we talked about bio CNG again. The government has come up with this decentralized model, which I like to call, and I've heard it about the Amul model. What they're doing is they're encouraging small entrepreneurs to set up very small biogas plants, with CNGs, biogas plants, as well as a compressor which will feed into the most local fueling station, and there is a linkage happening with the PSUs. So that's happening. The other thing I think as a companies we should be doing is clearly look at the landscape on what technologies are coming in and not that we can adapt into our business. So one of the things that was mentioned earlier about the carbon capture and underground storage, that is one area that we continue to look at. As we know, hydrogens come in different shades. There's the green hydrogen, obviously from renewable, but bulk of the world's hydrogen right now generated is a blue hydrogen, which is using methane gas to deform it and all that. The byproduct is hydrogen and CO2. If we can take care of the CO2, then you are net zero basically, and it's as that. So that's one of the areas that we are looking at. It can CO2 be sequestered into the strata, basically the CO, coal seams, as well as any abandoned reservoirs, and that's that area the industry is looking. Just I'll end it by saying that in the oil and gas sector, the majors, which is the likes of BP, Chevron, Shell, they have been setting out big, huge sums, billions of dollars towards future technologies and all that. And recently, Total reinvented itself and calls itself as Total Energies now. BP, their CEO Bernard Looney is all talking about renewable and how they're going to do that. They have a bigger challenge. They're not only looking at scope 1 emissions, but scope 2 and eventually scope 3 with the product that they make, how carbon intensive it is and how they can offset it. And it's a big task. For India, I think, what we have to focus is breakthrough in some of the technologies, particularly on electrolyzer sides, which can decentralize generation of hydrogen particularly. And that's a longer run, but next to 3 to 5 years, watch the space that what will come, because there will be disruptions, particularly in the fuel and energy sector and all that. And it will suit our long-term goals as well, to become energy independence by 2047, which is the call that was given on this, last Independence Day. So that's I would leave it there. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Santosh. So let me move on to Ashish. Ashish, your views. What should you think should be doing next 3 to 5 years?
Some of the elements were talked about. I would say bringing in ESG to the center of the company, knowing your own carbon footprint, putting out goals on reducing your water footprint. To me, that's hygiene right now. That's a minimum companies will have to do. I think as a country, the one big step we can take to move forward is to take green hydrogen as on a mission mode, and take some of the major industries, especially which use hydrogen today as part of the process, where that hydrogen comes from non-renewable sources, either natural gas or from as a byproduct of the refining process, which is fertilizer, steel making, and refining. Take these three sectors and move them to green hydrogen in a big way, and put a bold statement out there which takes hydrogen to less than 100 rupees a kg, and puts out the biggest volume of green hydrogen at the lowest price out there before any other country does that. So that is something India can take on a mission mode, because otherwise all the electricity that we put in renewable, we need a home for that electricity as well. And I think green hydrogen is the one big thing that we can take on a mission mode.
Completely agree with you, Ashish. Absolutely. So coming back to Amit, to you towards the end, but I have an add-on question to that. While you're responding, will it be possible to give some flavor of, is it going to be very costly, that we had heard that we should be doing this, hydrogen, moving to technology? You might have some ideas if you want to throw some light on that, along with what we should be doing for 3 to 5 years from now.
Yeah. So, Jay, I think there's 7 points we work with our clients who are either early disruptors or looking at a shift in their business profile. And these 7 points I'm going to narrate to you. We put that in a framework, which I've talked about before as well, called just simple ABCD. But these 7 points are first ESG framework that basically goes top, bottom, across the company. Everybody understand what it means to them. When you have ESG, it shouldn't remain at the board level. It should decompose down to your company where everybody understands what it is. Number 2, you need to fundamentally relook at your company's circularity and life cycle management. And circularity is important because just by changing your input characteristics, you can't expect efficiencies or cost to come down. And you can't fund this without circularity, right? So there has to be an element, whether it's steel, cement, pharma, chemicals, oil and gas, circularity has to really be fundamental. The third is value chain adjacencies. Please, one needs to rediscover the adjacencies in your market where you can partner, where you can take the last money out of your product or waste. Whatever goes in circularity and whatever is left is an adjacency, right? So you have a product, you have a circularity, and you have adjacency value, which you need to capture. The fourth one, which is important and answers a question that you asked, R&D and ROI must go hand in hand. Gone are the days when pilots and shifts to technology were looked at 10 years payment cycle. If you have anything that's going to 10-year payment cycle, don't go for it. Keep searching for a payment cycle ROI that is much shorter. And I always say R&D and ROI have to go hand in hand. Otherwise, you'll be burning cash and it'll be an exotic discovery with no outcomes. Every company that's look at these transformation must look at early TRL level discovery, whether with academia, partnership ecosystem, or startups. Work with them, fund them. Today, CSR law allows you to put in a bit of your contribution with academia, and it's under CSR allowed. So everyone should leverage that. The sixth is digital and data. Any industry you are in, you will be impacted because of fundamental shifts in your industry, whatever they are, with the competition having better digital and data strategies. And last but not the least, partner, reuse, plug and play. And if these 7 points were in your agenda item and you look at the framework ABCD, it's very simple. A is the input. B is what you do with it, which is core to you. C is your output, products that you provide to the market. And D is the circularity. And that's the loop that drives these 7 points. And I think a case in example, if you look at an integrated refinery, with whole integration, hydrogen is but natural. a play out there. Yes, you could have colors of hydrogen, but eventually it will get from blue, green, etc. Eventually all to green. Steel industry, reducing agent coke, easily hydrogen is the natural choice. Yes, there are initial levels of discovery, TRL levels to be studied with startups, but your ABCD framework helps there. And of course, the whole chemical infrastructure and landscape in India is poised to change with every energy transition and decarbonization, meaning chemical industry has a large role to play. So I think with this framework, we've worked on early discovery with our clients, whether it's cement, steel, chemicals, specialty chemicals, even infrastructure, concrete, as I said, precast, prefab, transportation. And we find that there are very positive, sincere, and holistic approaches. Don't look at 1 or 2 years tick marks, but look at this framework and be committed to it. Thanks, Chair.
Great response, Amit. Thank you so much. And I believe we are just on time. So I take this opportunity to, thank each one of you. It was really encouraging discussion. I learned a lot. And, I just pass it on to Mithun again. Mithun, over to you.
Thank you, Chaitanya. Indeed, very straightforward thought, very insightful. I loved every bit of content that we had. And I want to take this privilege in order to thank our panelists. Thank you, Mr. Santosh Chandra, for joining us early in the wee hours from the USA. Thank you, Mr. Amit Sharma. Thank you, Mr. Ashish Bhandari. Of course, Mr. Madhav Singhania, for the straightforward thought. Indeed, will help us in what is called the future. Chaitanya, as always, you are a great orator, a great narrator, and of course, a great moderator. So thank you for pulling together all the thread and giving us the best in terms of being seeker and giving us a lot to learn. Thank you again to everybody who's watching us. In case you have any question, put it down. We might take this forward and present it over to our speakers or moderator. And with time, they will have the answers to you. In respective time, we're 32 minutes past 4 p.m. on a fantastic Tuesday, 16th of November, 2021. What happens is what you want it to happen. And with that thought, I leave you all. Thank you so much again. My name is Mithun Upadhyay. Do connect with me on LinkedIn if you're there, and have a good one. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay protected. What we call it, the climate. Thank you again.
Thank you very